Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the November 10th, 2022 meeting of the Penfield Planning Board. Lori, would you please call the roll?
Yep. Hetzke.
Hetzke here.
Aken.
Aken here.
Burton.
Burton here.
Kanauer.
Kanauer here.
Tydings.
Tydings here.
Sangster.
Sangster here.
Weissar.
Weissar here.
O'Connor.
O'Connor here.
And Gray here.
Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming. If you're not familiar with the way we operate and conduct our meetings, tonight is a first meeting of the month, and that's our public hearing night. And between 6:30 and 7 o'clock, we typically take care of tabled items and business before the board in a work session. And then if we complete that work, we'll immediately move into the public hearing portion. And if we don't complete it by 7 o'clock, we'll pause that and move into the public hearing portion. So with that, we have minutes from the October 27th meeting. Hopefully everybody's had an opportunity to take a look and review them. And
Motion to approve, sir. Tydings.
I'll second.
okay.
Hetzke.
Hetzke, aye.
Aken.
Aken, aye.
Burton.
Burton, aye.
Kanauer.
Kanauer, aye.
Tydings.
Tydings, aye.
Okay. Doug, we want to start going through our table applications?
Yes. Tabled application number 1, the PathStone development. Staff has been in contact with the applicant after the board's last work session. There's a lot of good information that came out of that. They are working on completing a revised plan package to come back, published for rehearing before the board. I'll give the board any updates when we receive new information from them. But
Okay.
until then, you guys are comfortable to table.
Sounds good.
Motion to continue tabling.
I'll second.
Hetzke.
Hetzke, aye.
Aken.
Aken, aye.
Burton.
Burton, aye.
Kanauer.
Kanauer, aye.
Tydings.
Tydings, aye.
Okay.
All right, tabled application number 2, the Chick-fil-A at 2130 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road. They requested to table on October 9th, and it's really been cricket since then. We haven't had a lot of contact with the applicant. They provided no new information for the board's review.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll continue tabling. You entertain a motion?
Move to continue tabling.
I'll second.
Hetzke.
Hetzke, aye.
Aken.
Aken, aye.
Burton.
Burton, aye.
Kanauer.
Kanauer, aye.
Tidings.
Tydings, aye.
All right, tabled application number 3, RG&E, 2070 Empire Boulevard. Likewise, they had requested to table. They said they expected to be back in time for this meeting, but we have not received any new information to present to the board.
Okay.
Motion to continue tabling.
I'll second.
Hetzke.
Hetzke, aye.
Aken.
Aken, aye.
Burton.
Burton, aye.
Kanauer.
Kanauer, aye.
Tidings.
Tydings, aye.
All right, tabled application 4, the Arbors at Penfield. Okay, so following our last meeting, staff has been reviewing the revisions presented by the applicant. At this time, most of our comments on the plans are technical in nature, a lot of spot elevations, labeling, direct inverts, and technical items like that. 2 things have come up based on the feedback at the public hearing. The applicant provided 2 supplemental maps for you guys to review. They showed additional landscape buffering along Penfield Center Road that had been requested by some of the neighbors along Penfield Center, as well as some additional landscaping along the boundary with the horse farm on Penfield Center Road on the east side. Staff did have some concern with the layout of the trees on the east side. looking back at the grading and erosion control plan, the area behind those townhomes bordering up to the neighboring property was graded as part of a diversionary swale, collect runoff from that would be the north side of those townhomes, direct it back towards the road to be collected into catch basins and collected as part of the storm sewer system. In potentially placing trees in that area, it sort of impacts the swale. We don't generally like to see trees in swale as their roots will disrupt the grading and disrupt the flow of water. So that is something we'd like to see worked out on a more technical level on these plans.
Just so you guys know, I did get a plan today from their engineer showing the swale graded out and allowing room for the trees. I haven't fully looked into it yet, but I think it will work. So
Okay.
they are trying to address that question that we brought up to them. So
Okay, so you think that it's something that it's a solvable?
I think it's solvable. It's just a matter, you got to maintain the drainage, and because these trees are going to grow up, and the root system's going to, push the ground up, and then it's going to change the drainage, and then, we'll get complaints. But if we can provide enough space and stuff like that, it shouldn't cause too much of an issue. So, and I think it's there. I just haven't gotten deep into the fine minutia of it. So.
Okay.
Okay, is that an area where we would have an easement, or would that be something that would be covered in a maintenance agreement for the
It'd be covered in the property maintenance agreement.
Okay. And it looks like that swale is, you have Penfield Center Road, the trees, and then the swale
Right.
area. Okay.
Yeah, the swale is really more in the right-of-way of Penfield Center for the northern portion, so.
So that's not really an issue.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
But it was brought up to provide the buffer for those residents that are on the north side of Penfield Center Road, so. And plus, originally, we talked about, they were going to try to save some of the apple trees that, from the orchard, but with their GI requirements, they needed the space for the pond.
Okay. All right, and then we're going through the seeker process.
Yes. So the way we're handling that is seeker is really completed as part of the preliminary overall review. It was a type 1 action. The board reviewed it at a full build-out capacity and issued a negative declaration which detailed the impacts, the mitigations, and that there would be no significant impacts as part of that. As part of this review on the final phase, what we can do under seeker is we really review it for consistency with the original preliminary overall. If there are limited changes and limited impacts, it's mostly consistent with what was reviewed. We can, refer back to that neg deck and issue it that way if there are changes. And there have been a few changes I'd like to review with you guys ahead of that. The board can amend your previously adopted negative declaration. When it's amended, it will be reposted in the environmental notice board with the DEC. So one of the areas where there has been a change that we wanted to bring up was since they are no longer looking at multi-phasing the project and they're coming in for final approval of all subsequent phases as one large phase 2 approval, there has been some coordination between the applicant and their consultants, especially their traffic consultant, was SRF, it's now Passero, part of Passero Associates, and New York State DOT to figure out new thresholds for monitoring and implementation of traffic mitigation. In the original negative declaration, it was monitoring and implementation was based on the phases and as they were approved and started individual construction. Mitigation would be implemented as part of that phase. Since they're looking to do one large final phase, the DOT and their traffic engineers came to an agreement to look at the project based on occupancy, since occupancy will be driving the trip generations. So looking at the phasing for it, state DOT and the applicant agreed to essentially about every 200 C of Os. The applicant would be required to update the TIS and install mitigations, and the mitigations would have to be preemptive instead of reactionary. So if a mitigation was proposed as triggering the thresholds in what was phase 3, they would have to install it as part of phase 2 so that it is in place when they start phase 3. We did send this off to our traffic consultant, Burton and LaJudas, and we received a report back largely concurring with the findings of Passer Associates and the state DOT. The state DOT did ask for the town to ensure that they have a final say before we issue C of Os for a previous phase, that they have a chance to review and ensure that all of their requirements have been satisfied before we issue those C of Os. And that'll be something that we can address in an amended negative declaration.
Okay. So it's dotting the i's, crossing the t's with that.
Yeah, so essentially because the way the phasing was changing, we went back to the table on how we were going to implement the monitoring and installation of mitigating factors. And we've come up with, especially with state DOT, since it is their road and their jurisdiction, knowing that they're comfortable with how we are monitoring it, when we'll be monitoring it, and when mitigation has to be installed. It's where the town is comfortable with it as well.
Okay. Bob, do you have any comments on this at the moment?
No, so it just sounds like there's still some work that has to be done, amending the negative declaration and then also proceeding with a draft final application, and that should be available and ready to review at our December 8th.
Yes, so I believe staff, we do have enough time to draft an amended negative declaration and a draft approval resolution for the December meeting if the board is comfortable with that.
Yeah, any red flags, any concerns that you guys have on this at the moment? Terry?
Okay.
Okay, so, yeah, we should get the resolution prepared for action in December.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll move to table as we discussed, and then we'll readdress that at our December 8th meeting.
Okay.
Okay.
I'll second.
Hetzke,
Hetzke, aye.
Aken,
Aken, aye.
Burton,
Burton, aye.
Kanauer,
Kanauer, aye.
Tydings.
Tydings, aye.
Okay.
All righty. Tabled application number 5, Blessed Hope Community Church, 1280 Creek Street. So the ZBA approved their variance for buffer to a residential district. We did receive back comments from our architectural consultant. He did have some comments on the place setting of the building and materials, but staff is largely comfortable with the building as designed. It fits in and is similar in character with the commercial buildings around it on Creek Street. So
Yeah,
staff
it's a little unconventional for a church, but if they grow out of it, it can be repurposed to a building of similar use to neighboring buildings, I would think.
Yes. So staff has drafted a Part 2, 2 and 3 EAF and a draft approval resolution for the board's consideration.
Yeah, Jim, do you have any, this is your application, you have any comments, things that we need to discuss?
First thing is just a question for Mike. You were the only one that posted comments on the PRC, and I see we have a response here from the applicant. You okay with their responses?
Yeah.
Everything panned out okay?
Yeah, I think everything's technically in nature, and we can work through it. And if the board chooses to move ahead with, pre-Mylar type of things, and
Okay,
we're all set with that.
okay.
All right.
And I've done occupant load calculations on the proposed nave for the church, and I think they're more than fine, well under the threshold, so
Okay.
I'd like to move to ask staff to continue with the approval resolution and the Part 2 and 3 of the EAF.
Are you comfortable approving the Part 2, 3? We have them completed
Yeah,
for
we have
you
it
for your review.
completed, so.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, so we'll move that first.
We have a second?
I'll second.
Hetzke,
Hetzke, aye.
Aken,
Aken, aye.
Burton,
Burton, aye.
Kanauer,
Kanauer, aye.
Tidings.
Tydings, aye.
Okay, now the approval resolution.
Can I, excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I ask a question of Doug about this, I see Sovereign Drive is on this property. I just want to make sure that one of the conditions includes like the cross-access easements.
Oh, for Baytown Plaza?
Yeah, because this might have been one parcel that there was not, I don't know if we have a cross-access easement for this one yet, but we want to make sure
That we get one.
you do, because Sovereign Drive, it's the beginning of Sovereign Drive, and you want to make sure that it has access to go, the full length.
To the backside of.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that would be, if that's not a condition, that should be worked in so that all these, properties along Sovereign Drive can
Okay.
maintain access.
Doug, did we address that in the last application on this parcel?
I believe we did, and
Yeah,
I
I think we
can
did,
double
too.
check the easements that we had filed, because all the easements were filed for the daycare facility when it was
Okay.
approved on the site.
So either way, it's a good catch.
Yeah,
But
just
it's a
make
good
sure
catch, and
that,
it's something we can make
Yeah.
sure is included in the resolution.
All right. So with that, Jim, are you ready to?
Yeah, move to authorize staff to complete the draft approval resolution.
I'll second.
Hetzke,
Hetzke, aye.
Aken,
Aken, aye.
Burton,
Burton, aye.
Kanauer,
Kanauer, aye.
Tidings.
Tydings, aye.
Okay.
That was everything I had for the work session.
10 minutes early. Okay, so we can get moving 10 minutes early into our public hearing, so everybody can get home at a decent hour tonight, maybe.
Okay.
So we will begin this portion of the meeting with a Pledge of Allegiance. All right, thanks again, everyone, for coming. If you are watching on one of the streaming services or on the web, or on our cable channel or somewhere remotely, you are still welcome to comment. You can call the town hall at 585-340-8771. And the control room downstairs will put you in the queue, and you can comment. You can also comment electronically if you go to the Penfield website. It's penfield.org, www.penfield.org. On the homepage, there should be a link to this meeting, and from that link, you should be able to find your way to submit an electronic comment. The way that we conduct our public hearings, the applicant will sit at one of these two front tables and talk to the board about the proposed project that they have, and then board members will ask whatever questions that we have at the moment, and once that is complete, we'll open up the venue to public comment. There are little slips of paper like this over on the table over there that you are welcome to fill out if you'd like to speak. You don't have to fill one of these out. I will ask these people to speak first, and then after that, if you raise your hand, I'll call you as I see you. When you come up to speak and share your thoughts, the applicant will be at one of the two tables. Just go to the other table. You can sit down, speak into the microphone so that everybody in the room can hear, and everybody, the millions of people that are watching the meeting around the planet, can also hear. I know I see chuckles, but we have fans all over the world. I'm sure of it. But address, give us your name and address for the record, and then if you would, please address your comments to the board and not the applicant. Am I leaving anything out? I don't think so. Okay. Doug, go ahead and read our tonight's application.
All right, public hearing, application 1, Lakeside Engineering PC, 11 Center Park, Suite 305, Rochester, New York, 14614. On behalf of Rabia and Nilefar Zugehi, request under Chapter 250, Article 11-11.2 and Article 12-12.2 of the Code of the Town of Penfield for preliminary and final subdivision and site plan approval for proposed 3-lot subdivision with 3 single-family homes and associated site improvements on 2.48 acres located at 2305 Penfield Road. The property is now or formerly owned by Rabia and Nilefar Zugehi and zoned single-family residential, R120, application number 22P-0027, SBL number 140.01-1-75.2.
Okay. Are you?
Are we up?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes, you are.
great.
So come to one of these two tables and let's hear what you have to say.
I'm Rod Prosser, the owner of Lakeside Engineering in the city. I represent Rob Zuagi and Nilefar Farzard, husband and wife, in their desire to develop 2 modest homes on the minimum-sized front lots at 2305 Penfield Road. I know the item that's on everyone's mind, and I guess I wanted to start right off with, is the issue of drainage. There appears to be, we know there's a spot in the back where water does pond, after rainstorms, and the issue is, who should or would be able to take care of it. So the statement I put together expresses our beliefs and feelings on that issue. And it's addressed to Mr. Chairman and the members of the planning board. At the last planning board of the town, my clients were asked to provide a plan for the solution to the issues of drainage for the rear lot of their lot at 2305 Penfield Road. That solution has been put forth in the current plans for the project. That plan, although concept in nature, is the only feasible solution for the issue. We believe that with it, we have satisfied the request of the planning board. My clients, however, are personally unable to financially complete the necessary site plan improvements for that solution. We also believe that it should not be made their responsibility to do so as a condition of approval of their application. The problem was neither created by them nor under the plan provided will it impact their plan to build 2 modest homes on the 2 front minimum size parcels as proposed. When Rob and Nilefar first went to the town with their plan, they were encouraged to go forward by the town staff and that there should be no problem with a plan to build only their 2 modest homes due to the drainage situation at the rear of the site. The situation, in our opinion, is unfortunately mostly the result of approval of previous surrounding subdivisions having been approved by the town with insufficient drainage improvements being provided. That being proper fill and grading, along with the perimeter drains and additional storm sewer that would have carried their stormwater safely away and not dumping directly into this land, along with the state project, which dumps its drainage water through a large 8-inch diameter pipe directly onto this property. The application is set forth that the large rear 1.5-acre parcel could be developed for majestic home purposes on a large, attractive, treed property by the right developer used to providing more major type stormwater improvements as part of an application which would then constitute the final site plan approval application for the 3rd lot. That developer will also perform final drainage design, including the stormwater detention system, pump station, and force main as part of the process. He would also be responsible for a final application for permit for connection of the force main to the Monroe County stormwater sewer system available on Watkins Road. My clients cannot agree to do this, nor should they, since, as mentioned, they are only interested in lots 1 and 2 for their own modest home building purposes, for themselves and the sister of Mr. Zawagi, to be specific. We therefore respectfully request that the board consider all this when making decision for the approval of their application. Okay. Additionally, homes are intended to be about 2,200 square foot, and as I said, they're minimum size lots. Out of the 2.5 acres, they comprise about 1 acre, and the additional 1.5 acres is large lot 3 at the rear of the property. That property was our intention that would then come forward later with the eventual owner of the property to come in for final site plan approval, which would include also the design of the final specific stormwater improvements, design of the size of the detention pond, the final sizing of the pump, and the application to the County Department of Public Works, who are requiring full-size drawings, calculations, and other details for final approval of the permit application for that work. Concerning the last comments made by the planning board in the most recent meeting, application plans, these are comments, these are the answers to the comments that came to us. The application plans are fully sealed with the exception of the subdivision plan currently being reviewed by the licensed surveyor who will co-sign the drawing along with a professional engineer. I have a fellow I work with continuously. He's great and he's busy as can be, so he hasn't gotten to that yet. The stormwater erosion management is to be practiced as detailed on drawing 2, L1 drawing of the application, which is the site plan drawing. Stormwater management and drainage mitigation are shown on drawings 2 and 4, which I'm sure you looked at in detail, detailing the proposed stormwater erosion control devices, stormwater detention basin pumps, and force main work.
Rod, can I interrupt you just for a minute, please? I just want to make sure we're clear here.
Yeah.
Before you started reading your responses, I believe I heard you say that final details for stormwater management for Lot 3, the pond, the pump, the discharge, would come at a later date. Is that correct?
That would be at a final application hearing, yeah. Our intent, what we feel we've given you is a concept that I know will work. The exact size of the basin could vary somewhat. Exact size of the pumps could vary somewhat. It could actually go substantially lower. All we have to do is really pump that pond out in a couple to 3 days. It's set up to do it in like 6 hours right now. But these are questions that have come to me from the town engineer and county and so forth, that I don't, we haven't done detailed design that would tell the county Department of Public Works that in fact we're certain that their system has the ability to take this 200 gallons per minute stormwater into their stormwater sewer system. But, we fully believe it would do so, but, we don't feel we are the ones that should have to do, all the final calculations and work that would be a part of, I feel, a final application by the developer and the eventual builder on Lot 3. I don't know, does that answer?
So are you asking the board to consider approval of a 3-lot subdivision without final engineering details for all 3 lots?
No, for only Lot 3. Lot 1 and 2 have been finally designed. All the improvements, all the utilities, all the grading and the drainage, and the details of the stormwater erosion control, all the details of the meets and bounds and distances and all that, they're there for lots 1 and 2. There's no reason to have to check. They've been fully final designed, calculations and everything else, including there's a storm pipe designed for the project that would take that state pipe that's discharging onto their property safely around the second lot and back, which is, what has to be done to protect lot number 2. But that was taken care of.
Thank you.
So the intention is to develop the properties in the spring of 2023. Of course, we can't provide a firm, definitive schedule for Lot 3. It's unknown when they, or if, frankly, that would be something that's going to absolutely take place. We don't have a crystal ball. We feel everything we need to, or should be able to, or would like to make that happen. But frankly, it shouldn't be my client's, responsibility for 2 small homes at the front of a lot to take care of an area that's been presented by a much larger area of the whole town. And a problem that really, we'll have, they're high enough, dry enough, that, will have no effect on them, and they're at the 2 minuscule homes that, relative to everything else, will have no impact on the drainage, situation in the back at all. The seeker EAF forum assumes that, for application purposes, there'll be a similar timeline for the development of Lot 3. We don't know. Fire code, there were questions on the sprinkler, and I'm wrong in my answer on that one. The third lot in the back actually is greater than 600-foot distance from the nearest fire hydrant, which is a couple of feet from the south line of our property, and would require fire sprinklers in the final home design. Questions came from the Monroe County Planning Department. And I have those here, or comments I should say, concerning the Health Department. Their comment was they do not have to approve and sign the subdivision drawing. Did they give a reason? Didn't give a reason, but they don't have to do it. Page. Okay, here. Does not require realty subdivision approval by the Monroe County Department of Public Health. However, if the plan is to be filed in the county clerk's office, health department sign-off will be required. Existing and proposed utilities will be shown on the plans. They are to ensure lots have their own access to sanitary sewer, which is on the same side of the street as we are. Drinking water is on the opposite side of the road, and what'll be done, it'll be directionally drilled across the road. We won't have to cut up the road in order to get to the water main on the other side, and that's pretty standard procedure for these kinds of situations. The county DOT, as I mentioned briefly, is looking for final design drawings, calculations, hard copies and so forth for the final design, of the connection of the stormwater force main into their system. And I have looked at it. We haven't done all that final design stuff, but they have catch basins that are within reach, of our force main, and we would be able to connect into them, assuming they allow it. I don't know why they wouldn't. And their lines are 12-inch and 15-inch diameters, so they should be more than large enough to take really a relatively small amount of water, compared to what they're taking in otherwise, and able to accommodate. Pure Waters, we understand, and always do, take the drawings to them for their final approval and signature. And I know there's a PW2 form that has to go with it. It's actually already been filled out. And at the time we take that application and drawing to them, we will bring that form with us, of course, at the same time. Haven't done it now because we want to make sure, we're good with the town, and that there won't be any changes to it before we go to them for the final approval. Comments were also received from the DRC. Just got them late Monday afternoon, and they're pretty lengthy, but I've gone through them briefly, and I don't believe there's anything that we can't answer in some fashion, and we will do so, but obviously need more time to do that and redraw all the plans, which mostly, we're missing dimensions and angles and those sorts of things. I didn't see anything major in the comments that would force us to be led astray. Really, that's all I had to give you to say at this point, but I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have on the overall project application.
Well, thank you for your presentation. The thing that comes to mind for me initially, after listening to your comments, is why not just do a two-lot subdivision? I mean, it seems that you're proposing to, push things down the line to some phantom developer that is going to buy a piece of property with a...
At the last hearing, we were asked to provide a plan, and that's the sole reason that we put this together. It is a solution to the problem, and we've left it at that. If that's something that, we could just disregard and come back with a two-lot subdivision, we'd be glad to do so.
Okay.
Assuming that, that would be approved. If there's, because of that, I hang up on the approval of this, it doesn't really matter to my clients if it's 2 lots or 3, because they just want to use the front end of the property for their own 2 homes. A 2-lot subdivision would be fine.
So the distinction, though, would need to be that the second lot goes all the way to the rear of the property and solves the stormwater problem.
It would be all the way to the rear of the property. The stormwater, if nothing was done, would stay the same way it is now. And, as I said, we're at the front of the property, and there's going to be some fill, around the homes as well. And the problem in the back will not be a problem for the 2 lots in the front. Essentially, they'll be high and dry, and they'll be able to look in the back and see water. They won't be causing erosion or anything like that. That would cause the waters to be muddy. That's the main DEC concern. That's what they were looking for with the vegetation is that, there isn't an erosion problem, and is the vegetation necessary or adequate to guard against that. And we actually went to the DEC and got as positive a response as I think probably can from them, that what we had was good for that. And in fact, after the last major rainstorm a month or so ago, I went out there and there was water in the back. It was clear water, though. It wasn't flooded or anything, but if you walk through it, you'd get your shoes pretty wet. So, I mean, it's a tough one. First to admit, but it's really our feeling it's not up to us because we want to build 2 small homes in the front of the property that we should be made responsible for an area that affects a substantial area of the properties around us.
Well, they do own, it is their property, and
Would be, if we get approved.
So, am I clear in saying that they basically have an option on it, or?
I don't know what the exact situation is with that. Is the property an option, if the approval gets given to you, or is it already your property, Rob?
No, it's mine. It's
It is.
mine.
Can you
Okay, I'm wrong on
introduce
that.
yourself? and
Yeah, I'm
address for
Robbie
the record?
Zwagi and the owner of the property located at 2305 Penfield Road.
Okay.
Okay, so they're already owners.
Yeah, I already own that, yeah.
Rod, have you or your client had an opportunity to speak with some of the property owners to the south about the possibility of improving?
No,
No?
I know, I haven't.
To improve, and you mean the back side of the property or
Im-
like the whole thing?
Improving the
site?
standing water conditions that you heard from the public?
No,
the
not
last
really.
meeting?
Just spoke about, the 2 houses in general and, spoke to a couple of people and they're, ready to kind of, proceed with the project. I also called the company that does the drainage and they gave me a couple of options. That was, I think, 2 years ago when I got the property, and they proposed, I think, the French pipe. I'm not sure what was that. French pipe system?
French
drain.
French
Oh,
drain?
French drainage system. I'm not sure if that would work or not, but no, so. But
No, because, it's a big hole, and below it is rock. There's just nowhere for a French drain. A French drain has to drain to, a positive location, which, in order to daylight a drain, it has to go downhill. We'd like to make it go uphill and go over the big mound, that would carry it to Watkins Road, but we're about 5 foot lower than that, and the rest of the area around it. So, the only way out is to pump out. The French drain would just saturate and the water would come right back to the same level it does now. It would be a lot of money, wasted. We could fill the area back there, but, that would just exacerbate the problem, with properties around us, because it would tend to push the water back to, where it's coming from, and that wouldn't be any good, and, it wouldn't get rid of the water, it would just relocate it.
And one more thing to add here, the second house actually is for my sister-in-law, so both houses would be for the family members.
If I recall, the sketch plan, you initially had 4 lots, right?
First was 4 lots, yeah.
Yeah,
Then
right.
we came down to 2.
Well, right now it's 3.
I mean 3, but
3,
2
yeah.
houses actually,
Right, yeah. That was done by another engineer
yeah.
before I got involved with it. They had it broken down into 4 lots. Basically lot 3 was broken into 2 lots at that time, so they got 4 out of it. With the intention of my clients becoming developers, they don't want to become developers. They just want to build their own homes and go quietly on.
So why did you come back with 3 lots instead of just 2, if you only really want 2? And
As I said, we'd be glad to go back to 2. The third one was to present, a solution, that is that would be able to be borne by my client and provide a possible solution, to the situation in the future, and was to, dictate a project that would actually solve the issue, to show the issue is solved. So we reacted to a request by the planning board, to make a firm plan, a solid plan for how this would be handled in the future, but my clients don't want to be the ones that will do that work. It's an awful lot of money, and it would negate, their ability to, buy homes at all. So the only logical way to do it was to say, okay, we'll have a third lot, that will both.
But so, part of that, I mean, many people go and they'll go to a subdivision that's already complete. They'll say, hey, I'm going to move into Fox Hill or wherever.
Yeah.
And the developer, the builder, has already gone through this process.
Right.
And while people will maybe say, well, geez, why should I pay all that money for all that work to be done? The builder actually took that risk to do that. And, I'm looking at this, and they bought the property with the idea of essentially being the developer. And so I'm struggling with, I'm struggling with looking at this, hearing that the owners don't want to be the developers, and yet that's really what needs to happen.
Yeah. Well,
And so we essentially there's processes and things that need to go through in order for this to be acceptable. And I understand that, boy, it's a cost, but that's why the majority of people go, they might find two lots next to each other in a new subdivision that somebody else did all the legwork for. So,
this would be a project a developer would take on, a developer or builder, when they're out there, and there's ones that do this sort of work, and.
But you're essentially asking for us to approve something that
We're not
that
asking,
work's not really
we don't want
done.
final approval. We don't, we may not even, it doesn't even seem necessary that we would get preliminary site plan approval for the third lot. We want a 3-lot subdivision approval. If it's something that can't be done, we'd be glad to come in with just the 2-lot subdivision, and the second lot would be a very large lot. And we take away everything that was put forth as a possible plan, again, because we were asked to show a plan, and that's what we have. It's a concept. It isn't meant to get final approval, or, we said preliminary approval only because we feel, it should be on the table. When and if that developer comes in, and it could be a beautiful lot. It's a large lot, it's a well-treated lot. There's ample, actually the detention basin makes sense because there is a need there for fill for the home site itself. And it's common, for these guys to go in and build ponds to build up the home area. So we're talking about the addition of a couple little pumps and a forest line that could be directionally drilled all the way from one end to the other. And I haven't estimated the cost of that, but it's something that has been done in the past by the right people, and could be done again. And we've just answered the question of bring us a concept, for plan, and that's what we've done, and nothing more than that. Be glad to take it off the table and come back with 2 lots.
So
If that's what we have to do to get approved, that if the third lot is hang up for whatever reason, otherwise, it would sit there. If nothing happened, it would sit there and Nilefar's and Rob's ownership until it got sold, and it would get sold again, with the second or third lot, or whatever. And just trying to explain, that where we're at, and why we did this, and we thought we had to get approved.
So in theory, if you came back to the board with a two-lot subdivision, two single-family lots encompassing the entire parcel, then the pond and the stormwater pump and the force main would have to be constructed by your client or his?
No, it would just go away, you know, it would be status quo of that back area forever, you know. You know, I tried to, you know, explain that, you know, as we, you know, as happened when Rob and Nilefar went to the town originally, it was presented to them that this was like a no-brainer for coming in and getting two homes approved on the front of the lot. You know, and somehow that has gotten twisted around and it's become a major challenge. You know, and we're trying to do everything we can to meet your desires, and you know that seems to now have backfired a little bit. But you know, we're still open. We just, you know, Rob and Nilefar just want to build two simple homes and beautify the town, leave the trees, certainly make better, you know, an area that's now just barren, you know, with landscaping and flora and fauna and nice homes. I think it would be, you know, a project that would be beneficial and aesthetic and all those things for the town. But I guess we're looking for guidance. You know, would you like us to leave it the, you know, in the 3-lot form or go back to the 2-lot form? You know, if we can get approval pretty much determined ahead of time, that'd be great. That's all we're looking for. But we're not looking, I mean, it just is impossible for them to do this. You know, it's just too much money, too much effort. It's something they don't need to do. You know, all the improvements in the back, and it's not going to happen from them. You're by them.
So whether it's 2 or 3 lots, you can't make the drainage situation worse.
No.
And, you know, typically, applicant comes in and their drainage calcs and all their plans are, this is how they're going to make it better.
Yeah.
And that would be expected as well.
Well, we can do calculations, you know, we can show all that. You know, we can get the permit from the county DOT, and we can, you know, satisfy the town engineer as our pumps, you know, are correctly sized and capable, and our detention system is correctly sized and capable. But that would change nothing as far as my clients being able to actually do that, to do the actual construction. The design is no problem. Didn't get into that because, you know, our feeling was that a concept would suffice, you know, just, you know, as concept plans do, that come to you so many times and you don't act on them. You know, we can accept the 3-lot or a 2-lot subdivision, you know, for subdivision approval, obviously needed to go forward any further. Site plan approval, our anticipation was final approval, because we need that to actually do the site plan work for lots 1 and 2.
Is this
Not
a
3.
sketch plan review, Doug, or is this a?
No, this is a preliminary final. They came in for sketch plan back in, I believe it was July.
Yeah, it's application for preliminary and
And we're
final.
looking for preliminary.
Was it a complete application when it came in?
I mean, we have full detailed plans. We had a lot of comments on those plans that were provided in the PRC memo. Technically speaking, it did provide at least an initial set of details, sufficient to begin a review, but there was additional information requested, which did include additional details on the pump connections to the county DOT's storm system, coordination or any information from the state DOT on curb cuts. So we did request additional information as part of our review.
Any other comments from board members?
I had a question, I think for Mike. In the town, do we have any stormwater pump stations of this scale?
We don't have anything.
Yeah, that was kind of my impression. You know, the most you're going to see is a residential basement sump pump for water that's, you know, just kind of on the site.
Right.
For basement drainage. And, you know, I look at, you know, I know it hasn't been fully engineered, but you look at, you know, the prints, it's a serious pump to do what you anticipate this has to do. And I almost, you know, looking at it, it gets to the point where for that lot, there may be some sections that just aren't feasible to develop. You know, you can develop anything given enough time and money, but there's a point where I guess it doesn't make sense. So, but yeah, I didn't think we had anything of this scale. And then, you know, the question that came up too is who maintains it? It's really a private system. So that would, the burden would have to, I would imagine, go back on the owner. So.
Right.
It would either have to be an owner or a private association between the three
Or
lots.
association for the benefit of the 3 lots, yeah.
Correct.
My thought is just that the 2-lot subdivision, though, would be, you know, better to resolve, at least hopefully resolve some of that issue in the back, instead of having 3 lots, for sure. I don't know, I'm not an engineer, but it would prevent it from getting any worse, I think. You know, making that all 1 lot.
You're still going to have to do something with the drainage, though, regardless.
Yeah.
If you're talking about 2 building lots, there's not enough impervious surface there to really impact. I mean, the concern with many of these people in the audience that we heard from before was that development of this property would exacerbate an already difficult condition that a couple times a year they have significant standing water along the boundary of their property. And they were concerned that this project would make that worse. So that's one of the reasons why we're asking all these questions.
Right. Okay. I'd like to open this up to the audience, and we'll begin with Tina Green. Is Tina Green? Yes, come on up. Why don't you come up to this table and give us your name and address. I know I have it here, but you need to say it out loud for the record. I'd like to hear your comments.
Okay. Good evening.
Good evening.
Superintendent, councilmen and women here. Okay, so I frequented here several times prior.
Here where? Town hall?
To the town hall.
Okay.
Yeah. All right, so wait a minute. I see they're still sitting there, so you're not asking for our input on for a solution for them, right?
You're up here to speak about this application and what comments you have about the application
Oh, okay.
before the board.
All right, for their application.
Correct.
Okay. Well, from what I've heard and about the development that they're saying, it sounds like they do have a plan if there should be something that transpires with the sewage or the water flow, and that it sounds like they have a plan that can be implemented. The gentleman on my far left, he had told you all that by them putting in a system that would go down and go back up and taking it back down to another street, another outlet, it will help with their problem of the water. I guess that's what I heard. He could correct me if I'm
Exactly what
wrong, but I heard that distinctively. That was a viable solution to the problem that they're currently having. Then I heard the young man who is the property owner, that he's owned that property for 2 years now, and these plans have been thought out, and they've come, and as you see the abstracts before you all that's been presented, that it shows where their lot is located, it shows where their sewage, their plumbing, it shows everything that blueprints would normally show when you're constructing a house, from what I'm seeing. So as for the third lot, I don't know if the village town has a criteria of lots being an acre or more of an acre. Some of them, when you're building, you have to have at least an acre. I don't know about the depths of it. Sometimes your depths of your lot has to be a little bit different, or it just has to be the whole, like the cubicle of an acre, for what I know, because I had my home built. So anyhow, for what he was saying, it's 2 lots, but there's a third lot. But I guess you guys have to decide how much acreage for each home that you build on. I don't know if this is a problem or not. It wasn't spoken, but from what I know, when I had to build my house, you know, it was within acreage, because the lots were already, some of the lots were already predetermined, some were less in acreage, but they said because of, I had to have a well.
There's a zoning map
Yeah.
for the town of Penfield, and the entire town is divided into zoning districts. And this particular zoning district is R120, which the minimum lot size is 20,000 square feet, which is roughly about a half an acre.
Yeah, I was going to say that's less. Well, if it meets the criteria, I would think it's a family. There are 2 families that want to live by each other, and if everything meets the specs and the regulations, I don't see where there would be a problem, not unless the neighbors might have a problem. And that's the thing that you have to look into. Is the problem really with the foundation and what we're building, or is the problem with the neighbors, that we're moving into a neighborhood? And that's where, if you didn't ask your neighbors like they asked you the question, did you go around and ask the neighbors? Well, maybe you should ask the neighbors to see really where it lies at. It might go beyond the fact that you have your preliminary plans in that. It could be just the neighbors. I guess that's all I have to say. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Okay, Tom Forrester.
Board members, Tom Forrester, 11 Hunters Drive, North Fairport, New York. Lived there 35 years. We don't abut to the land. We are 1 lot back. It's about 30 feet from the property line of this discussed piece of property we're talking about. We're 30 feet back from that. There's another piece in front of us and 1 to the side. And we've lived there 35 years. We have had water up to 20% of my yard where we can't use it until June every year. The opposing counsel over here said that he went out after we had a rainstorm. We're 6 inches behind on rain, and it was soggy then. It was clear water, great. We call it Lake Penfield. Ducks have been landing in there for 35 years in the fall. The neighbors that I abut to, and then their property comes up along his edge, they have a sump system. They have 3 sump pumps they had to put in when they built the house back in '87 to pump the water uphill because it was so bad. It was an in-ground pool when they first built that house. It was an in-ground pool. There was 5 to 6 feet of water when they put the brick up. So we've been, 35 years we've been doing this. Then they moved in the state home, the group home. They brought in 6 to 7 feet of fill. It was lower there. They put in 6 to 7 feet of fill. That created more problem. Again, we can't use the back 20% of my yard. I have a half-acre lot. So that just keeps getting worse. We haven't been able to keep any trees alive because the water is so deep there most of the year, up until June. It's not just spring, it's until June before I can go back there. Then it's like a rock because it's clay. It's just, it's tough. I appreciate that he bought these lots, and you can see the progression of what he had. It was going to be 3. And then somebody, I think it was Carl, came down and talked, nope, and then it went to 3, then it went to 2. Now it's 2 with, we'll sell this and shuck it off onto somebody else. It's not going to work. If you look at the topographical map they have there, they show the state property as being 500 feet is the height. And they show his as 499. No, there's a 6-foot difference between the state property and where their land is. Are they going to fill that up too? Because if they do, where's that water going to go? It's been there forever. I appreciate that he's got to pay probably $30,000 to pump that uphill and then maintain it. Not my problem. We live there. We've been there 35 years. We've had this. We have done everything we can. We looked into French drains. We can't end up dumping it into his property because that's what we would have had to do because there's no place else for us to go because I have a 8-foot gradient from my street level to the back of my yard. And then this goes down another 6 feet behind that. Yeah, we've had ducks back there. I mean, my daughters are 42 and 45. They remember ducks being there when they were growing up. We used to go out there. I don't understand, he bought this land with he was going to make some money on it. Good for you. God bless you. Then it changed, and then it just kept getting worse, and now they want to shuck it off to somebody else. And nobody is going to pay $30,000 premium on a lot and then maintain it to pump from there to Watson Road. And then guess what? We're stuck with the water. I mean, I buried my dogs in the backyard. I dug a 2-foot hole. It filled up with water before I could get the dog in it. It's been like that forever. I put a shed back there. I had to put 8 inches of gravel to lift it up high enough so that it wouldn't rot. It's just terrible. The neighbors behind me, they can't use probably half their yard for half the year because there's so much water. I believe there's a spring someplace feeding this because it's there all the time. We're 6 inches under our normal rainfall. Go out there and do a perk test. A hole will fill up. It'll fill up on its own. Right now, I'll bet you $100 it'll fill up on its own. So, they're going to have to bring in 6 feet of fill to bring it up to what they say their topographical map shows. It's not That's another thing. So I don't understand how they're going to do this. We've had that issue forever. There is so much moisture back there. From my deck, you can look and see the pampas grass. That's what I call it. It's the long stalks, not cattails, but they're fluffy and white at the top. You see them in all the swamps and wetlands around here. I'm going, is this a wetland? There's various levels of wetlands. I would think this would be a fens. Yeah, okay, yeah. Yeah, I did a little research. It's a fens. I bet if you did the alkalinity of the soil and the plants that are growing back there, you would see it might be on the thing. Have we done a clear water Section 404 inspection of this area? Is that this, who does the Clean Water Act? Somebody has to go in there and check that if there's a possibility of a wetlands, because within a 3/10 of a mile, there are 3 swamps on Penfield Road. As you start going up the hill, the North Penfield, yeah, well, it's East Penfield. So we might have a wetlands issue besides on that there. So it's just something to think about, because I was looking for anything, because we don't need any more undrained settlements back there. It increased when they put the state in. The state came in, that was sort of a done deal. We didn't get much to say on that.
Nobody does.
I know, and we're all going, Jesus Christ, and it just got worse. It just got worse, and it just got worse. We do have a lot of rain there, and when it does come, oh yeah, you walk back out there, and it's over the top of your shoe sometimes. Again, my yard only has 2 trees that my neighbor gave me, and they're just barely hanging on. Anything else we planted back there dies because it's so wet. It just doesn't stay. So it's been ongoing. The engineer mentioned that they were going to have to bring in fill. If they bring in fill, it's just going to make it worse, because then it's got no place else to go. It's just got no place else to go. I appreciate that the owner bought the land. He speculated that he was going to make some money on it. Hey, I got money in the stock market. I've lost that too. It's a wash. Maybe you should have done it. They talked about it's a well-treed lot. I would say 12 to 15% of the trees that are on the border now that they didn't cut down when they came in and clear cut it are dying. Why are they dying? There's nothing wrong with the trees except the roots are just inundated with water. They're just dying. And they're going to end up falling into my neighbor's yard now. So they cut down all the trees that were sucking up the moisture. And now it's just a barren field right now. So I would check it for wetlands under clean water and Section 404, and it's a FEN, F-E-N-S.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Just to comment on that, we checked with wetland and it's not a wetland. We did make Yeah. We called the office and they did run a check and nothing is there.
Did somebody physically go out there and check it, or do they just look at a map and say it's not? I'm just asking, let me see some documentation. People say a lot of things. I've heard, I'm telling you from actual fact from 35 years living there. So I would like to see that in writing with a notary on it.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Ken Wanamaker.
Good evening. Ken Wanamaker at 5 Hunters Drive North. My property line doesn't actually touch this particular proposal, but it's the triangle that intersects the lots on Hunters and I believe it's 10 Fox Hill. And there's actually a swale that runs from Fox Hill towards the other property that is ineffective. So I've been in the home for just over 2 years now.
That swale runs between your property and the house on the
And the
corner?
Swangers on Fox Hill, 10 Fox Hill, I believe it is. You can kind of see it on the, yeah, number 10. Right, so you can see.
Okay, so you're not the corner lot, you're one north of the corner?
Correct. Yeah, right
Okay.
there, number 5. Just to reiterate comments from the last meeting that, just within 2 years after that site was cleared, and obviously this is a previous satellite image that shows the extent of the trees there. It's empty now. So, just within 2 years, going through 2 seasons, one with the trees and one without, there's definitely a noticeable change in how that property drained and percolated. So I would like to make a comment. I think that either way, and I know the board's already addressed it, but a 2-lot or a 3-lot, there would still have to be some remediation of the stormwater. It may be, even a 10 or 15% difference in impermeable surface could make a pretty big difference if you factor in basements pumping out. The grade goes from 441 all the way to the back of the lot, so that would change it. Again, just reiterating another point that was brought up by the board is there's not really any precedent for a pump station on a privately held piece of property, which is a major concern of mine. Also, just to comment, I don't have any problem with this property being developed at all. Just want to see something that benefits the entire neighborhood and manages this problem. I know a lot of it was exacerbated by the state, but hopefully we can come to a solution that's beneficial to all.
Okay.
That's all.
Great, thank you. Anybody else like to comment on this? Yes, sir, come on up. Hi.
My name is Robert Wells. I live at 15 Hunters Drive North. And just to, I guess, comment with what Tom is saying, he's my neighbor. Yeah, we've lived there for 35 years, and we've always had this water problem. It's never gone away, and it seemed to have gotten much worse. I think this whole plan, even when I spoke with Rose Gabrielli, who owned the property before, she said she was having a difficult time with the water, and that's why they didn't clear it out. They cleared it once, and that was maybe just after Dad got the property for her. And there seems to always be this water issue. I know that when we bought our house there, they told us there was something in the deed, we could never grow corn and sell it, and that the back area was always going to be forever wild, is never going to be developed. So here's what we are today. We have a lot with a lot of water on it that we want to develop homes on it. And I'm all for developing these homes. But the remediation of this water has to be the number one thing that gets taken care of. That's it. I mean, when you put those houses on that land, it's going to actually take away from the surface area, so it's going to drag more water to the lowest point in the lot. I just think that that's, you got to think, we're either going to pump it out, we're going to put a retention pond. I can't imagine there'd be any type of hydraulic pump to move that water forever. And who's going to pay it? And if you have only 2 properties there, who's going to pay the taxes on the undeveloped lot? How does that work? But I'm all for these homes being built. I'm all for it. But I think that the water issue is a #1 priority that needs to be addressed. So I'm not against it. I just think the plan needs to be more formulated and something that's more from a real engineer's point of view that have dealt with this situation in the past. That's it. But again, I welcome you in the neighborhood, and I just wish there was some way you could get this water situation, because it'll solve a big problem for everybody that lives backed up to that area. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, we had one yes in the back.
My name is Jason Jabor. I live at 17 Hunters Drive North. We actually share probably the most of the lot line along that area. And I remember speaking at the last board meeting, and
You're the flag lot?
Yep, that one.
Okay.
Yep. You know, we just moved in the end of June, and you know, one of the things that I do, listening to the engineer, first and foremost, you've yet to ask us about any of what you're planning on doing. Not that you have to, but someone brought up asking neighbors.
Sir, you need to address the board, please.
I'm just saying, okay. I've never been asked. He's never asked me, never came up to the house. This is the first time I've seen him, right? And one of the things that, you know, while the engineer is talking, makes me think, and I kind of brought this up with the last meeting, you know, who's responsible for the pumps and ponds and everything? If, you know, the person doesn't want to pay for taking care of that, how is he going to pay for when they stop working? Because anybody who owns a home or owns rents an apartment knows that stuff breaks after a while. It could be a year, it could be 20 years, but something's going to break and someone's going to have to take care of it, right? And while you could be the greatest homeowner and pay everything and be good, but if you fall in hard times, what's going to happen, right? So it's nothing against anybody, but if they're not going to pay for things to be taken care of, then how are they going to pay to maintain this stuff once it's been put in, right? And why should, you know, we already pay a ton of taxes. We all know that. Why should taxpayers have to pay for pumps and ponds and everything else in order for them to have housing, right? While I'm not against the land being developed, you know, I do like the privacy. I love the wildlife back there. I kind of wish I would have been able to see it when there were more trees and stuff. I can, you know, confirm with the first speaker, all the trees along the fence are all dying. They're all going to fall into my yard. Anytime there's a windstorm like we've been having lately, my kids and I, we go back and we pick up all the sticks and we, you know, throw them in a pile. We'll use them for bonfires in the summer. So all of the trees and everything along the fence, they're gone. So some of the trees on my side of the fence are starting to go as well, right? And I don't know if it's because when they cleared it, they cut up roots. I don't know if it's the water, but, you know, the whole "there are plenty of trees" statement, that's false. There aren't trees. It's just, like everybody's saying, it's just grass. So my point is, if we have a situation where, you know, the owner wants to develop, and I'm cool with that. If he wants to develop for his family, I would never deny a family home, housing, whatever. But if you can't afford to put in those things, how are you going to afford to maintain it, right? And, you know, it's kind of the risk that you take when you purchase land that you haven't done your due diligence in researching it, right? Just like, you know, we purchased that house. We moved from South Carolina. We purchased that house. We weren't able to get an inspection. We weren't able to see it in person. And there's situations where we've had to fix it. I've had to put $20,000 into that house since June, right? That's a risk I had to take as a homeowner and as a person, you know, buying that house. Unfortunately, this is the risk that they had to take purchasing that land. If it can't be developed, if there is a water issue and you can't afford it, I'm sorry, that's it. That's on the person who bought it. So, and if you can't see a way around it, then, you know, that's it. So I That's more what I wanted to say. I mean, if there is a water issue, I've yet to see it because I haven't been there long enough. I can see that, you know, the only way that you would potentially do it without a pump is if you raised the grading on all of that. Like everybody's saying the state raised the grading, but then that basically just dumps the water in everybody else's yard, right? Like you guys have already said. So while that's great for the people trying to develop the land, it kind of stinks for everybody else around them who, you know, have enjoyed that their property for 30 years plus. So, and that's just it. So,
Thank you.
Just for benefit of the neighbors, I think it's important to note that the town code prohibits the development of any parcel from discharging stormwater onto an adjacent piece of property. So that's not something that the town would ever approve, just for the record.
Carlos?
My name is Carlos Swanger. I'm at the 10 Fox Hill Drive site. I thought I'd give the Fox Hill perspective since we heard from hunters. We've been on that property since 1998, and I would, agree with everything that's been said. It's been wet back there all along. It's gotten wetter, as it's been already talked about. I mean, my concern is, again, there has to be a solution to that. I don't think a solution is kicking it down the road for some future developer to manage it. I don't think that's a good solution at all. I also want to comment on, in terms of communicating with the neighbors, the only communication that I heard from my neighbors, they didn't communicate directly with us, was basically that there was a talk about building a driveway that would potentially encroach very close to the back of our property. And if the property owners were willing to pay $9,000 each to buy that small sliver of land, then they wouldn't put a driveway back there. That's the only communication I'm aware of. I don't know of any of the neighbors that have said, yes, we're willing to see it go forward without some mitigation of that water problem. So anyway, I just wanted to give the Fox Hill perspective on that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, does anybody else from the audience like to comment on this application? Okay, Ms. Green, you may be looking for the town board instead of the planning board. We're the planning board. We deal with subdivision and site plan approval. That's the you can come on up.
It's fine. It's been interesting. It's been great just sitting in on this. So I know that at another time.
Okay.
I think I was misinformed, which is why.
Okay, thank you. Any other board comments on this? Anybody else from the audience? Let me just quick check. I've been lax in looking at phone calls and web submissions, but we have none. Okay. Thank you for your presentation, and we will call this hearing closed. I'll pass those down to Lori.
I didn't hear you. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for
You're
letting me speak.
welcome to stay if you'd like to hear. It's
Sure.
not private, it's public. If you'd like to participate, you're welcome to stay.
And then,
Oh. observe.
You'll be our lone observer.
Okay, so obviously we're tabling. Is it even reasonable for a two-lot subdivision
There are
without
substantial
creating?
drainage issues on the property, and that was, we met with Rabia I met with him 3 or 4 times. The 2 times I still have in my notes was September of 2021 and June of 2022. I believe we met with them prior to them purchasing the property as well, and each time told them that this property has been for sale for a very long time. Part of the reason for that is we believe it has a substantial drainage issue. Rose Gabrielli tried developing it a couple of times. I believe the most recent was in 2012. She came to the town board requesting to do a rezoning or an incentive zoning project to do townhouses there. So we'd explained to them that this was a property and that
ever come before this.
It has a lot of drainage issues that would have to be addressed as part of the development.
I'd like to make 2 observations. The first one is that these poor folks that really probably were ill-prepared for what happens in the town of Penfield.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, but they're probably also unaware of the fact that the water table could be greatly impacted from a great distance away from their backyards. You know, they're looking at one development that was put in the group home by the state, and they make a visual connection to that. They brought in fill and they raised that up, and they perceive that to be the sole contribution to the exacerbation of standing water in their backyards, when in fact there's lots of development in the town, and the water table is impacted by that development from potentially great distances. But I think the more important observation is I don't see how they possibly get by seeker.
Yeah.
You know, it's for what they're willing to do, and it really, it's not financially viable to put in a stormwater lift station and put a maintenance bond on it, and you know they need a generator, so if the pump failed, I mean the list goes on and on. For development of 2 or 3 lots, it just doesn't work.
Right.
But even they would need to do something along those lines to overcome the environmental impact. I don't see how we possibly get by the environmental impact. So it doesn't make any sense to me to continue to encourage them to pursue this proposal as currently outlined.
Others?
I agree.
Is any of that lot, the front portion, developable?
I mean, so it does, the lot does drop off from 441. The lowest spot is that sort of southeast corner. It has been a naturally low spot forever.
Yeah.
You know, I believe the state group home lot was subdivided off of this at some point in the past. I don't know when. I'd have to do a little bit more research on the properties to figure that out. But this has been a known property with a known water issue for many years. It's why it sold cheaply to John Gabrielli and Rose Gabrielli, and
yeah, who knows what.
And prior to Rabia coming in, we had conversations with other folks who were interested in the property as well. You know, every time we explained that there was substantial drainage issues and that the drainage issues would have to be mitigated as part of it. In addition, the distance from fire hydrants was an issue. Curb cuts were an issue. That curb cut that is shown, one of our comments, both on their plans and that we've spoken with other folks who were interested in the property, was the existing curb cut really isn't usable for anything more than one house. It's a 14, 15-foot wide, essentially farm access curb cut, so New York State standard, it wouldn't meet New York State standards for anything more than a single driveway, certainly not a private drive, supporting multiple houses. So it is a challenging property. I believe town staff in our meetings with everyone we spoke to who was interested in the property and the current property owners, staff explained that this was a tricky property, that it had a lot of outstanding issues, and we did not necessarily encourage an application, but we do state that everyone has the right to make an application to the town to go before a board. That is their right. But we did explain this property has issues. It's the reason it sat on the MLS for 9 years.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm going to move to table, and I think that we should include a lot of these comments in that tabling resolution.
I could do that.
Well, obviously, they're under no obligation to make improvements to adjacent property owners' standing water.
Correct.
They just have an obligation not to contribute to it.
Correct.
Right. So, a lot of the comments that we heard, as unfortunate as they are, I mean, we've got houses over on Baird Road that have, huge pumps, 3 times this size, to get rid of some of that water.
Yeah, Mallory Lane, same deal.
So,
for some of them
it's
that
not unusual, but
that are on Hunter's Drive, it's been, the neighborhood was put in 30 years ago. Swales deteriorate over time. We often, sort of make the joke that drainage never gets better from when you install it. So for them, it could be that their swales are just flattening out, the silting over, and they're not as effective. But that would be part of their own property maintenance they would have to do on their side.
It could be planting beds and trees and shrubs
and gardens and things that block the drainage, which we have laws against.
Things that, but people don't necessarily realize that or know what they're there for.
But
Can I ask you a question? The water main that's on 440 for homes that are in that area, how deep is that? Is it at a level where it could be connected with a pipe all the way over to the low area of that, or is it too high?
can you come up and state that in the microphone?
You can't,
just so that it could be heard.
So it is the end of the public hearing portion, so it's a work session.
Yeah. No, I understand. I didn't expect it. I just had a question.
Are you guys okay with the question? Or do you want me to answer?
Sure.
So I'm just wondering if there's
It's the first time in 20-something years, but yeah, go ahead.
pipe out on 441 that they could connect to, is it at a much higher level?
As far as I'm aware, there's no storm sewers on 441.
Okay, where does all the water go for, like our property on Hunter's Drive? There's a big concrete.
It's collected and it discharges on a pond that's on Fellows, or Watson Road, sorry.
Yeah,
Fellows,
right here is
Watson
a
Road.
pond.
Mm-hmm.
So even if there were, chances are they wouldn't be permitted to discharge into a state storm sewer system
State tends to
anyhow.
be pretty particular on connecting to their system.
Okay. Yeah. Because we have obviously on our street, we have drains for the water and whatever.
Yep.
Is there some way they could connect to that somehow?
Well, they might be lower than the storm sewer. So they would still have to pump in order
They'd
to
have to
get it.
pump up.
So there's no natural grade to make
And then they would have to be provided an easement through somebody's property to allow to be connected to it.
I see, okay. Sorry, thank you for
Sure.
accommodating me. I truly appreciate it, thank you.
Sure.
So maybe there's a way to fashion the tabling resolution to let them know that, neither the board nor the potential neighbors are generally opposed to the building of, one or two houses, but they're going to need to come up with a way to overcome
Yes, and
stormwater
They need to
issue
overcome those issues.
before they can come back.
Which is
And they
what
can't
he
pass-
specifically said that he didn't think he had the
Wherewithal to do.
right.
Well,
and it was
started
something-
out by saying that he didn't think it was their obligation to do,
Right.
that they just wanted to build their two houses and leave it to somebody else, and that, of
Right.
course, is never going to fly.
Well, what would ultimately end up happening is they would struggle to sell that property. In all likelihood, it would end up in county ownership.
The question that I wanted to ask, and I didn't, was, have they talked with any small residential developers that might be willing to take the third lot as a fee payment for,
Help and do,
well, solving a stormwater problem and performing the other
building their
site
houses,
improvements?
Right.
I mean, maybe somebody would be willing to jump in and
It's a question we could pose in our resolution.
Maybe the state will buy it.
Yeah. That'd be great. Okay, do we have a second for the,
I'll second.
Hetzke.
Hetzke, aye.
Aken.
Aken, aye.
Burton.
Burton, aye.
Kanauer.
Kanauer, aye.
Tydings.
Tydings, aye.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
We have anything else?
Anything else?
That's all we've got for you guys.
All right, thank you, everyone, for coming, and we will adjourn.